The familiar chime of my daughter's doorbell always used to make me smile. On birthdays, on holidays, even on ordinary Sundays when I brought over banana bread cooling in the trunk. That sound meant family. Laughter, a table set for 3 generations. Today, it sounded like a fire alarm. It's 2 hours of driving, hands clamped around the steering wheel, replaying every unanswered call, every voicemail that never arrived. Chloe had been distant for weeks, and her voice on the phone had become a thin, fragile thread. Yesterday, that thread snapped entirely, straight to voicemail. No text, no explanation. A mother always senses when love has soured into fear. The house stood perfectly still under the afternoon sun. Not a leaf stirring in the pristine yard. A silence too absolute to be harmless. My throat tightened as I stepped up to the front door, only to find it unlocked. Chloe never left doors unlocked. Inside, the foyer greeted me with the scent of fresh flowers that had wilted too quickly. The air carried a stillness that pressed against my chest. A museum of what happiness used to look like. Something was wrong. Then it hit me. A sharp, chemical temps curling beneath the lavender air freshener. Gasoline, the scent seemed to creep under the walls, seeping up from some hidden wound. I called out, "Chloe!" My voice echoed unanswered. In the living room, everything was almost perfect. Too perfect. A framed photograph face down on the mantelpiece, Chloe and David on their wedding day. Their smiles bright. His hand wrapped around hers like a promise. A promise he must have broken. Leo's favorite superhero blanket lay crumpled in a corner like someone had kicked it away. Toys missing from their rightful spots. The kind of chaos that doesn't come from a child at play, but from someone in a rage. That chemical stench prickled at my skin. I followed it to the door leading down to the basement. Sound crept through the crack. Voices tight and furious. Not a discussion. A confrontation. I descended slowly, step by step, the carpet muffling each move as if the house itself were holding its breath. My heart thudded so loud I feared they would hear me before I reached the bottom. The office door stood slightly ajar. Through the gap, the scene revealed itself like a nightmare illuminated in full daylight. Chloe's back slumped, shoulders shaking with the effort to hold herself together. David towering over her fist planted on the desk, eyes 2 polished stones filled with anger and calculation. His voice chilled the room, low, controlled, almost gentle. The kind of softness that precedes violence. The transfer just needs your authorization from work. Chloe, it's 1 click. Stop being dramatic. Her reply barely made it past her lips. I can't. It's the pension fund. For our employees, I won't take their future. He leaned in close. I already covered the first one. No one knows. No one will ever know. The first one, my heart cracked open. How long had he been poisoning the life she built? I can't do it again, she whispered. They'll trace it back to me. We've already lost everything. His mask slipped. Desperation feral and hungry twisted his handsome face. Those people I borrowed from don't give second chances. He grabbed her wrist. Not violently. Worse than violently, possessively. Like something he owned. That was enough. I pushed the door wide. The world froze. Chloe's eyes widened with shame and relief. David stiffened, disbelief flashing before he replaced it with a charming smile soured by fury. Eleanor, he said, with a voice dipped in poison. This is private. It stopped being private the moment you made my daughter your accomplice, I said. My voice didn't tremble, though my bones did. He stepped toward me. I stepped further inside. There are moments that define a mother. This was mine. The monster in my daughter's home finally saw that I had fangs too. David's father arrived with the storm tucked inside his tailored suit. Charles always had a way of making even a greeting feel like an assessment. The moment his eyes swept the room, the open office door. Chloe's tear-streaked face. David pacing like a caged animal. He understood the stakes. His silence was a verdict. Chloe clutched Leo's tiny go-bag in shaking hands. I'd packed that bag myself 3 years ago when Leo was born, insisting every parent needed one. Chloe laughed, then called me dramatic. As she held it like a lifeline now, her eyes flickered with grim gratitude. No mother is dramatic about danger, only early. "We're leaving," I said, guiding Chloe toward the stairs. David stepped forward, eyes wild. "You are not taking my son anywhere?" Charles spoke without looking at him. "David, don't." A single command. A leash pulled tight. We stepped past the man Chloe once believed was her protector. His breath hitched as we moved, as if he could feel his grip on power slipping like sand through desperate fingers. I glanced back long enough to etch that panic into memory. The drive home was suffocatingly silent. Leo slept in the back seat, clutching his action figure, unaware his world had cracked open tonight. Chloe stared at the passing streetlights, like they were counting down to a future she wasn't ready to face. "You should have told me," I whispered. She pulled her coat tighter around herself, shrinking as if trying to disappear. I kept thinking I could fix it, that he'd stop, but it wasn't my place to make a mess of his life. "Oh, sweetheart." I reached for her trembling hand. "You already made the mess. We tried to make you clean it up." A tear slipped down her cheek, then another. "I thought he loved me," she said. Nothing hurts like realizing someone married your heart just to rob it. At my house, I made up the guest room. Fresh sheets, soft pajamas. All the small comforts that mothers weaponize against darkness. I tucked Leo in and kissed his forehead, swallowing the fear that lodged in my throat like a stone. Once the house fell asleep, I sat alone at the kitchen table with a cup of burnt coffee and a roaring mind. The gasoline smell still clung to me, like a warning I couldn't wash off. There would be consequences. David wasn't the type to lose quietly. Men who build their kingdoms from lies don't simply surrender the throne. They scorch earth. My phone chimed. A message from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have interfered. You don't know who I owe. You just made everything worse. No threats. Just truth sharpened into a blade." Minutes later, another notification blinked. "David tried to destroy the memo you took. We can help you keep your daughter and grandson safe. Meet us tomorrow." This one included a location. A quiet cafe by the river 2 towns over. I stared at the screen. Not David. Someone else. Someone watching. A chill crawled up my spine as I typed back, "Who is this?" No answer. The night stretched on, thick with dread. My mind flooded with unforgiving possibilities. Those people David borrowed from the pension fund. The gasoline. The confrontation. Chloe wasn't just in trouble. She was already in the middle of a crime scene. Around 4 a.m., I stepped outside to breathe. The air was crisp, too cold for the season. The street lamp flickered once, then twice. A car sat parked across the street, black engine off. Windows too dark to see inside. Watching. I closed my coat around myself, jaw clenched. They thought a 64-year-old widow would be easy prey. I smiled, bitter and sharp. Hunters always underestimate the lioness who's protecting her cubs. Kay would regret that. Morning sunlight felt like an intrusion, a harsh light revealing every dread I tried to bury through the night. I found Chloe at the dining table, wrapped in Leo's superhero blanket like she needed his courage to keep breathing. Her eyes were swollen but alert. "You didn't sleep either," she said. "Sleep is a luxury for people who aren't being hunted," I replied, pouring her a cup of tea before sitting down. "Chloe, what kind of people does David owe?" She swallowed hard, fingers twisting the blanket. "Investors," he said. "Private financing." I didn't ask questions. I wanted to believe him. I leaned closer. "Honey, these are not investors. They are the kind of men who don't call lawyers when things go wrong." She flinched. The truth is always cruel the first time it lands. Before we could speak more, a thud against the front door jolted us. I rushed to open it. A small cardboard box sat alone on the porch. No delivery truck in sight. No footsteps, just silence. I brought it inside, my pulse racing. Chloe hovered behind me, breath hitching. I lifted the lid. Inside lay a single object. A child's toy car. Leo's, the one he always kept in his pocket. A message without words. "They were here," Chloe whispered, voice trembling. "How did they—" I slammed the lid shut. "Pack a small bag. Only essentials. We just got here," she protested, panic rising, "and they already followed," I said. "We can't stay." Her eyes filled with terror, the kind that steals air from the room. "Mom," she whispered. "What if they take Leo to make David pay?" Her voice cracked on the last word. My heart split clean in two. "No one will touch that child," I vowed. "Not while I can still stand." While Chloe gathered things, I dialed the number Charles gave me years ago in case of emergencies. A private investigator on his payroll. I hated the idea of accepting help from a man whose only love was reputation. But I hated coffins more. The call went straight to voicemail. Convenient. Before leaving, I checked the mailbox. A white envelope with my name in bold, jagged ink waited inside, like a trap disguised as a letter. Inside, a short note. "We only need her signature. Give her back to him. This doesn't concern you." The paper reeked of gasoline. Chloe saw the letter over my shoulder. She covered her mouth, tears falling soundlessly. The humiliation was etched into her posture. She believed every word of David's manipulation, believed she was responsible for his downfall. I folded the letter neatly and tossed it into the fireplace, watching flames devour the threat. Then I held Chloe by the shoulders. "Listen to me. You did nothing wrong. David is drowning in a debt he created. He wants to drag you down with him because he can't face the consequences alone." Her chin quivered. "What if it's too late?" "It's not," I said. "'Cause I'm here now." We slipped out through the back door, using alleyways like fugitives. Leo slept in my arms, his head on my shoulder, unaware his safety balanced on our whispers and footsteps. When we finally reached the car, Chloe buckled Leo in and asked, "Where are we going?" "To the River Cafe," I answered. She stared at me. "Why?" "Someone sent me a message last night. They know what David did. They know how to stop it." Chloe shook her head fiercely. "We can't trust strangers. We can trust information," I corrected. "And we need a weapon stronger than fear." As I started the engine, I took one last look at our home. For the first time, I understood something terrifying. We weren't escaping David. We were escaping his enemies, and they believed Chloe was part of his crime. As we pulled away, Leo stirred and whispered half asleep, "Grandma, someone is watching us." My knuckles went white around the steering wheel as I checked the mirror. A black car turned the corner behind us. The hunt had officially begun. The cafe sat on the riverbank like a postcard scene, trying to hide a scandal. Nobody would suspect secret meetings here. People came for croissants and gossip, not confessions. I parked where I could watch the lot. Chloe huddled close to Leo in the back seat, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs she tried to hide. Mothers learn to cry quietly. It keeps the children from knowing the world is falling apart. K. Inside, the cafe smelled of cinnamon and burnt espresso. Morning chatter filled the air. Harmless, oblivious. Normalcy has never felt so obscene. A man in a gray coat watched me over a folded newspaper. Early 50s, clean-shaven, eyes too sharp for casual reading. When I passed his table, he spoke without looking up. "Eleanor." A statement, not a guess. I sat across from him, pulse pounding with suspicion. "Who are you?" He slid the newspaper aside, revealing a small stack of printed documents bound with a paperclip. Bank statements, wire logs, unauthorized transfers. "My name is Victor," he said. "I work for the people David owes." Ice water rushed through my veins. He leaned forward. "Your son-in-law has been stealing for 2 years. Not just from Chloe's company. It's from us." Chloe's life twisted into the crosshairs and she never even saw the weapon. Victor continued. "David told us he had access to the pension fund. Guaranteed liquid assets. Zero risk." His jaw tightened. He failed to mention that access belonged to his wife. I inhaled sharply. Every assumption I held cracked in that moment. David wasn't keeping Chloe safe by hiding things. He was fattening her for slaughter. He kept borrowing, Victor said. Promised returns that never came. Debt has tripled. He tapped the stack of papers. We warned him, gave him deadlines. Grace. Time has expired. A sick realization dawned. The gasoline smell, I whispered. Victor's eyes held mine, steady and unflinching. David was preparing to disappear. We suspect he planned to stage a tragedy. House fire. Insurance payout. My throat closed. With my daughter and grandson inside, Victor nodded once. The cinnamon scent suddenly made me nauseous. Flames licking walls. Leo's toys melting. Chloe's wedding photo charred to ash. David's monster mouth declaring it an accident. Before breath returned, Victor said, "You need to convince Chloe to sign the transfer. If she does, we walk away. This ends quietly, and if she doesn't," my voice was barely a sound. He answered without blinking. "She will be removed from the equation." A threat so clinical, it stole the humanity from the room. I stared hard at the stack of documents, cold proof of David's rot. A lifetime of moments led to this table. The baby I rocked, the teenage heartbreaks I soothed, the wedding toast I gave, all weaponized by the man she trusted most. I kept my voice steady when I responded. "If I help you, you'll leave Chloe and Leo alone." "Yes," Victor said. "And David?" I asked carefully. "He remains responsible for the debt." Responsible. Such a tidy word for destruction. I stood. "I'll need time." Victor nodded. "Not much." He pointed to his watch. "We expect a decision by tonight." His message delivered. He picked up the newspaper again, blending into the cafe chatter like a ghost of finance. I walked back to the car with legs made of glass. Chloe's anxious face appeared in the window before I even opened the door. "What did he say?" she cried. I forced a smile I didn't feel. "We're not going to let anyone hurt you." She looked relieved for a heartbeat, unaware of the oceans of fear rising behind my lie, because now I had a deadline. By nightfall, Chloe was either safe or dead, and the only man who could save her was the monster who wanted her gone. David, the poetic truth hit me like a blow. To bring him down publicly, I had to let him think he was winning. You learn quickly at my age how to make patience into a weapon. Time stretches like taffy when you're planning. The waiting is where the real work hides. I'd spent an entire life keeping small accounts household budgets. Birthday lists. Who liked chamomile and who preferred their tea blackhand. Now I used that muscle to balance evidence and lies on the edge of a knife. First, I needed David to believe he still controlled the story. Monsters only glow in the dark. They fade when exposed to light. So I fed him shadows that looked like light. I called David, voice soft and grandmotherly, the way a mother speaks when she wants to disarm. "I'm worried about Chloe," I said. "I don't want the family dragged through the mud. If you'll come to dinner tonight, we can talk. It's a family." The lie felt like glass on my tongue. "Of course," he said. Relief thundered through his words. He thought coaxing me would seal Chloe's silence. He was already rehearsing a smile. Next, I met with Chloe. I could see the tremor in her hands even when she tried to steady Leo's cereal bowl. "We have two options," I told her plainly. "Sign the transfer and live under someone's shadow, or refuse and be invisible to them. For a while. But waiting is not nothing. We buy time. I will make him confess." Confess. She echoed, hope and terror tangled together. Yes, I took her hands, not with threats. With what he fears most, exposure proof. The truth's audience, she clung to that like a drowning woman to driftwood. I gave her a plan simple enough for trembling fingers. Act compliant, sign a controlled temporary paper. I'd prepared with an attorney I trust, fake signatures, formal looking, but legally inert enough to placate. Victor, if he needed paper to show his superiors. Time to work. Then the rehearsals began. At the table that evening, I set more than soup and familiarity before him. I set his vanity like a map. David arrived with his practiced charm softened, as if he'd forgotten how to be gentle. He wrapped an arm around Chloe and placed a hand on Leo's crown of hair. He played the husband, the doting father. He smiled in a way that said he'd won. Over savored roast. I dropped small, careful comments. It must be stressful managing company finances, I said, letting the question be an invitation. He deflected with ease. It's complicated. But Chloe handles most of the day-to-day. Yes, I agreed. Slow. We all must do the right thing for the employees. So many livelihoods. He nodded, oblivious. Every nod was a step closer to the cliff I'd prepared. While he bragged about deals in creative financing, I watched his face tighten at certain words. Pension. Audit. Trace. These were cracks I would pry open later. That night, after they left, I did my own quiet work. I photographed the papers Victor had given me with my phone and emailed a copy to a lawyer friend under a pseudonym, adding a carefully worded line. If anything happens to Chloe, make these public. The email itself would be evidence I could later present to the court of public opinion. I also sent a discreet message to David's company email. Annoyance to certain irregularities might become known to the press. Small leaks, like pinpricks, would make the water swell. When the messages reached him, David didn't yet know how to handle them. He answered with arrogance and denial. That evening, he stormed back to the house, phone clenched like a weapon, fury simmering. Who sent these? He demanded, pacing like a caged animal. I answered with buttered calm. Someone worried about the people who will be hurt. Do you care about them? He lashed out, not at me, but at the idea I'd betrayed him. You don't understand what I've done, what I've had to do? Then tell us, I said softly. Tell me everything. He looked at me, betrayed by confidence, and maybe, just for a second, by his own reflection. Then he smiled the smile of a man rehearsed to survive. I'll handle it. Trust me. He left the house breathing violence and swagger. He thought he still had the cards. And in his pocket, he carried the lighter I found later in his jeans, the same cheap metal lighter that had a tiny burn mark on its hinge. It was an innocent thing, and maybe I would have missed it if I didn't know how monsters keep their tools close. I pocketed the lighter for later. The hunt had begun in earnest, and the net was slowly tightening around him. First crack in David's polished armor did not come from lawyers or police. It came from mothers at a playground. One Tuesday morning, as Chloe sat on a park bench watching Leo wobble along the slide, she overheard a conversation behind her. Two women, quiet voices, nervous glances. He's the one who worked at Meridian Investments, right? Yes, the gambling story. My husband said money disappeared. Pensions, maybe. Do you think the wife knew? She must have. It's impossible not to. Each word was a pebble dropped into a pond. Ripples, expanding. Chloe tried to breathe normally, tried to pretend she wasn't the wife. She blinked hard as if she could unhear it. When she turned, the women snapped their attention to their phones like children caught misbehaving. The shame wasn't theirs. It was hers. Rumors are vultures. They smelled the future carcass long before the first cut. David still walked around believing he had fully regained control. He took early morning meetings, wore his expensive suit jackets, kissed Leo's head for appearances. He strutted more when scared, like most cowards do. Meanwhile, I began winding the coil, a few gentle nudges into the world. A conversation with a neighbor who volunteered at a financial ethics group. A casual chat with a former coworker of David's at the grocery store. A tip slipped to a local reporter who adored corporate scandals. Teeny tiny seeds, nothing traceable. Just enough to grow vines that would wrap around David's ankles when he least expected. The journalist was young, the kind who smelled headlines like a predator. Her name was Marin Quinn. She called me one afternoon, her voice like a secret. Is it true, she asked, that funds went missing before David left his firm? Ask his father, I replied. He's the one who paid to keep the mess quiet. I let silence do the rest. Would Chloe be willing to talk? She pushed. No, I said firmly. Not yet, because timing mattered. A story too early might be dismissed as gossip. A story released once the cracks widened could split an entire foundation in half. That evening, David confronted us with a smile stretched to thin. Someone's asking questions, he said, pacing. Some reporter, she knows things. I raised an eyebrow. Then you should be honest. His laugh landed too loud. Honesty doesn't protect people like us. Strategy does. That word, us, stuck in my throat like poison. He still believed Chloe was trapped in his sinking ship. Still believed I could be frightened into silence. I leaned back in my chair, calm. A grandmother sipping tea, not a general preparing for war. You always underestimate the people you hurt, David. It's your fatal flaw. He turned toward me, fury flashing like heat lightning. You think you can threaten me? You have no proof of anything? Oh, I don't need proof, I said softly. You already know what you did. Eventually, someone else will too. People like Marin always get their story. He didn't answer. He stormed out. Later that night, I found Chloe sitting at the kitchen table, her hands trembling around a cup of cold tea. She looked up at me with wide, exhausted eyes. Mom, are we really doing this? We're not destroying him, I whispered, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. He already destroyed himself, just removing the scaffolding he built to hide it. Outside, wind rattled the windows, a warning that a storm was approaching. Not a meteorological one, a social one. David used to wear confidence like a tailored coat. Now, it hung off him in soggy, wrinkled folds. He flinched at every phone call, checked the windows twice before locking them, drank more, slept less. The walls he built were starting to whisper back at him. Chloe noticed it too, and guilt gnawed at her like a persistent rat. She had once loved him, trusted him, built a home with him. Now she watched the man pacing her living room like an animal afraid of its own shadow. One night, David cornered her as she placed dinner plates on the table. Did you talk to that reporter? He demanded. Chloe stiffened. No. You sure? 'Cause she knows too much. My father would never. He slammed his fist against the counter. A glass rattled and toppled. Someone is feeding her information. I stepped in, wiping my hands calmly on a towel. David, you're unraveling. Maybe you should sit. I'm fine, he barked, though his eyes were rimmed red and frantic. What I'm not is stupid. Something's happening behind my back. Yes, I said, folding the towel. You made sure of that when you hid everything behind Chloe's name? His breath caught. For a second, he looked like a little boy afraid of being punished. Then, rage returned. This is my family, he hissed. My life. I won't let anyone save the theatrics I cut in. You don't care about this family? It's only about the illusion of one. His jaw twitched. His fists clenched. I could make you regret saying that. I smiled lightly. You already have. He stormed out again, car engine loud as thunder in the quiet night. Chloe's shoulders sagged, a marionette whose strings had finally snapped. Mom, she whispered, he's spiraling. What if he hurts someone? He won't, I assured gently. Because every door he opens from now on leads him closer to the truth he is terrified of. Himself at dawn, the police knocked, not with handcuffs. With questions. Detectives politely asked about finances, pensions, unusual transfers. They were fishing. David tasted the hook. When he learned Chloe spoke with him briefly, cautiously, the dam inside him cracked. You betrayed me, he roared, cornering her near Leo's bedroom door. You think they care about you? You're the one whose name is on those files? I stepped between them, voice low with controlled fire. Yes, her name is there because you put it there, 'cause you needed a scapegoat. He lunged toward me wild-eyed. But then the sound of small feet interrupted. Leo stood at the stair, landing in his dinosaur pajamas. Soft, sleepy, confused. Daddy, David froze. A father caught by his son's eyes is a man reminded of his failures. He backed away. I'm trying to fix things. For us, that lie fell dead in the air. Later, when Leo was asleep again, Chloe whispered, we have to record him. I nodded. Confession bleeds quickest when pushed gently. We waited. Patient hunters. The next day, Chloe told him she would stand by him if he told her everything. She spoke with trembling sincerity, just enough truth to bait a monster's need for validation. He sat. He began to talk. Shaky at first, then faster. Details poured out. Names, amounts, the loans, the threats, the forged signatures, the offshore account, the pension fund. All of it recorded on her phone, tucked behind a photo frame. When he finally stopped, gasping as though he'd vomited a secret that had rotted inside him, Chloe said softly, "We can fix this, together." He nodded, relieved. Stupidly relieved. Upstairs in the hallway, I exhaled very slowly, hands steady on the railing. "You did good," I whispered to the empty air. His confession was the final nail, and I had the hammer ready. David thought confession brought freedom. It brought exposure instead. 2 days later, his father arrived unannounced. Expensive shoes stomping through the entryway, like entitlement was a marching order. "Where is he?" Charles demanded. "In the kitchen," I replied, stirring tea as if the world wasn't about to shift. "Where criminals often hide, right behind self-pity." He glared at me, nostrils flaring. His gaze then cut to Chloe, who sat with her hands folded tight, knuckles white. "You recorded him," Charles hissed. "How foolish! Do you know what you've done?" Chloe lifted her chin. "Saved myself." Charles looked ready to erupt, but footsteps approached. David appeared, eyes hollow. He didn't look like a man anymore. He looked like fear-wearing skin. "Dad, they can't do anything if you help me fix it. You always fix it." Charles exhaled a brittle, icy laugh. "You think I can bury this? Embezzlement? Fraud? Conspiracy? These aren't youthful mistakes. These are felonies. Then cover it up." David snapped, panic replacing pride. "You always cover it up." The truth was finally spit out. David had always counted on someone else to pay for his sins. "Chloe," Charles said, turning to her, voice low and cold, "if this goes to the press, we all burn." "No," I corrected, setting the teapot down with a soft click. "Only those who deserve it will burn." A knock shattered the tension. 2 detectives entered, polite smiles masking the hunt beneath. David Reed. The taller one asked. David staggered back. No, you can't." "We have questions," the detective interrupted. "You can answer them at the station." David looked to his father like a drowning man begging for a lifeline. Charles did not move. Reputation was his oxygen, and David had become poison. They read him his rights, cuffed him gently, like pitying a fallen king. Leo peeked from the staircase again. This time David didn't speak. He lowered his head, shame finally fitting him like a tailored suit. When the door closed behind them, silence filled the house. Heavy, honest. Charles stood rooted, shoulders sagging for perhaps the first time in his life. "You think you've won?" he whispered. "No," I answered, meeting his tired eyes. "There are no winners in what your son did. Only survivors." He left without another word. Later, Chloe cried not for the man David pretended to be, but for the years she lost believing the lie. I held her while Leo played on the rug, unaware of the tectonic shift that had saved his future. Days passed. A newspaper headline finally arrived. Local father indicted in pension. Fraud scheme recorded confession seals case. David's name was everywhere. Fired, disowned, exposed, social ruin first. Legal downfall next. A complete collapse. Justice has a way of making monsters look very human at the end. Months later, we sat in my garden. Autumn leaves flickered like firelight around us. Chloe lifted her face to the breeze. "Mom, do you think he ever loved me?" I placed my hand over hers. "Not the way you deserved. Love without respect is just possession." She nodded slowly, the truth settling into her bones like warmth instead of cold. Leo chased butterflies between the roses, laughter echoing like a promise. Sometimes survival is the most beautiful revenge. And sometimes justice comes from a mother who refuses to let the gasoline reach the door again.